Bowls buddies, hello and welcome to another week on the channel, and we're going to kick off this one with a look back at the 1981 April edition of Bowlers World number 31, a real blast from the past. 40 years ago, hard to imagine 1981 being 40 years ago. As a 7-year-old in 1981, I thought we were in the future. Obviously not. Anyway guys, thanks for joining me today. Remember, click that like button if you enjoy these videos, and if you're not already a Bowls buddy and a member of this wonderful community of ours, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to click the notification bell for notifications of new content on the channel. So I'm just gonna talk about the Bowls World. So I have a lot to tell you, but I'm going to save it for Wednesday. I hope you like the new shirt. I think the pink brings out the colour in my eyes. Bowls Trader, Steve Broom, bowlstrader.co.uk. I might have a bit of an announcement about that on Wednesday. Hopefully you'll all profit from it. Maybe. So we're going to take a look at the Bowlers World from April 1981. On the front page, Eddie Elson, who we talked about on the last Monday Blast from the Past episode. It's war. Rebels must come into line or else. Crown Green Bowling is facing a season of open warfare with players, clubs and officials treading a dangerous line. And basically, we've talked about it before, BCGBA wanted every competition to play under their rules, and it was still a very big competition. Most of the big competitions, to be fair, were played under the old professional rules or a version of those, and it was basically, you're not going to be able to do it anymore. You fall in line or we're not going to allow you to run your competition. Okay, and here we are 40 years later. Basically, yeah, we all play under the same rules. Whether they're enforced or not is another matter, but we all play under the same set of rules, unless you are a member of the panel and you play on there, or at the Griffin, of course, one of my favourite haunts. And to be honest, I think it was a reasonable request for British Crown Green to make. You know, if we are playing a sport, we should really play under the same rules. You know, I know golf, for instance, has local rules for different courses, but generally 99.9% of the time they play to the same rules, which is the way it really should be. I think they were just setting out their stall and seeing what happened, and it did take a few years. I think the Waterloo helped a lot by falling in line, and I think it was after 1982. I think 82 might have been the last year they started in the centre of the green under the old Blackpool rules. Could be wrong about that. I haven't watched the 83 final recently, but I'm certain by 84 that they'd fully converted to British Crown Green rules. This issue is absolutely chocker with interesting stuff. Things that I didn't really, I knew they'd happen, but I didn't know when. And 1981 was the year that Lancashire disappeared from the British parks. Up until 1981, Lancashire were there with, I think, Cheshire, Yorkshire, and there were only 5 counties: Warwick and Worcester, Staffordshire, I think. But Lancashire disappeared in 81. And then basically became Greater Manchester, which I'd always wondered when that had happened, because I used to play at Syke, and I know they were Lancashire Parks champions back in the day, and I always wondered where Lancashire Parks actually went to, and now we know. Also on page 2, what happens when a loser is a winner? Should bowlers be allowed to re-enter events once they have been eliminated? This is one of the questions have been discussed, particularly in the Midlands, where players and organisers are concerned over the increase in the practice rights. Mike Wakeland. Well, I mean, re-entries, yeah, you could argue that it's wrong. Once you beat. But if that's the rules of the competition, that they allow re-entries, well, you go in with it with your eyes open. And I've no problem with re-entries as long as it's stated in advance. The situation I've seen is where people have lost and then re-entered on the sly. The organisers not been able to fill the event. Maybe there are a handful of entries short of 128, and they've just said to one or two who've got beat, would you like to go in again? And the players have taken them up on the offer. Now, for me, that is morally reprehensible. It's criminal almost. But if you're entering a bowls competition on the understanding that it's a re-entry, don't see an issue. And there's been some great re-entry competitions over the years. I can't think of any now. There might be the odd one played at the end of the season, but Morecambe used to have a big re-entry. Fleetwood had a big re-entry comp. Starring at Failsworth, that was a re-entry as well, and they used to get 1,000 entries, so they're obviously popular, but maybe in this day and age re-entries aren't the dumb thing. But it's certainly, when clubs are trying to run events and get people in, and maybe there's a core of maybe 60 bowlers that really are really keen, then I don't see a problem with people wanting to re-enter, as long as it's stipulated in advance. On page 4, counties get their big TV break, and this was where the Top Crown Pairs event was going to be opened up to all the various counties. Before that, it was an invitation, and the TV basically put players together who they wanted to see on telly and who they thought were good for the crowd, and then they opened it up to the counties, and counties started running county pairs competitions, and the winners would go through. So that was brilliant. But down at the bottom of the page was something that just sort of interested me. Teenagers steal the show at Barrow. Every bowler knows that successful players are getting younger all the time, but in one event recently, the total age of the finalists was just 28. The final at the British Cellophane Club's Whitbread tournament at Barrow was between Andrew Thornton, 13, and Tony Whitehouse, 15, with the young Andrew teaching the older lad a lesson, and Andrew won 21-11. And they went on from strength to strength. Both of those played Cumbria for an awful number of years. Both did well on the circuit, and nice to see juniors keeping on playing the game and developing into really top players, which both of those lads did, and still playing even better. So can't beat that. And like I say, the rest of it, there's loads of things I could talk about, but I don't want to be rabbiting on for too long for you, because I know you get bored. Page 7, Brunner Cup's record field. Cheshire County's Brunner Cup has attracted a record 120 clubs for the summer's major team competition. Sutton Manor from St Helens is among the newcomers. Well, the Brunner Cup, very much like the Cheshire's version of the Yorkshire Cup, where all the clubs used to enter the main cup competition. And I know Yorkshire used to get over 128, Cheshire got 120, and that kept increasing. And I know for a lot of people it was an opportunity to go and play on a new green against different clubs. They were played on neutral venues and generally just have an afternoon out. Obviously some clubs took it more seriously than others, but it was a good day out, good afternoon, and I've been fortunate to win both the Brunner Cup and the Yorkshire Cup with various clubs, and they're still held in very high regard. But then Cheshire, maybe late 90s, early 2000s, said, whoa, hang on, you can only enter the Brunner Cup for Cheshire if you don't play in any others. Now, for a lot of clubs that's not a problem. If you're in the middle of mid-Cheshire, say, if you're Wharton Cons for instance, not an issue. But if you're on the border, if you're somebody like Georgian Dragon at Hyde, they used to enter the Brunner Cup, they'd enter the Greater Manchester Premier Shield, they'd enter the Derbyshire version. I'm trying to think of some other teams. Yeah, play like St Helens, so they're Merseyside really, but on the edge of Cheshire, teams from Merseyside, used to enter, and all of a sudden they had to make this choice. You can't enter, if you enter another county's competition, you can't enter Cheshire's. So all these clubs who have been playing in maybe 3-team competitions for several years, so they had to give some of them up. So all of a sudden, the entries drop. Maybe there's 15 in Cheshire now, 50 in Cheshire now. I know Greater Manchester, you only get a handful where you used to get 30 odd. Even Yorkshire's dropping, and from what I can gather, not only is it because they're not allowed to enter, but a lot of teams feel like they're just cannon fodder for the bigger clubs. They don't want that day out anymore because it's expensive. You can't. You'd have to get a minibus if you wanted to have a drink, things like that. So for various reasons, these things dropped off. But 120 clubs, that was pretty good going. And like I say, I think it got to more than that, but dropped back down again, unfortunately. And then there's all sorts. I could talk about every competition here, but I'm not going to do. This is going to be the last thing I talk about. Back page. Pensioners told run your greens. Now this was a very prophetic piece, if you ask me. Many pensioners have been bowled over by a council's threat to close bowling greens unless the players agree to run them. That has been the reaction to the economy scheme for greens in the Rochdale, Middleton and Haywood areas. For Rochdale Council has plans to withdraw attendance and open and close greens and collect ticket money, saving £9,000 a year in wages. The drawback for club members is that they will have to be unpaid collectors for the public and will be responsible for security. However, the council will continue green cutting and maintenance. So this was the start of the very, very slippery slope that we are currently getting towards the bottom of. Councils cutting the cloth, trying to reduce costs as much as possible. And I'm sure you can all think back to when you used to go to your local park screen. There was a bloke there sat in a kiosk. If there was a putting green, he'd be selling tickets for putting greens, he'd be loaning out balls, he'd be doing all sorts. But that's all really he'd be doing. He'd be getting paid not a lot for doing not a lot. And then I suppose, I know in Rosendale they tried to give that job to the greenkeepers, so in the morning the greenkeepers would cut the green and do things like that, and then in the afternoon they'd be selling the tickets and all the rest of it. And then they said, well, hang on, why are we paying these people to sit when there's already people there who could collect the money? Now, to me, it's not the club members' job. They pay a rent to the council. The council, in return, the council cut the green and do whatever. To take money off the general public is not the club members' job, and certainly security isn't. If you know, nobody should be put. Even back then in 1981, people should have been putting themselves in the way of danger like that. And they said, well, we'll keep cutting the greens and everything, and you know, if you don't do this, we're just gonna not bother with bowling greens. And it didn't take them too long before actually they said, well, you know, we haven't got the manpower now to cut your greens. You're gonna have to cut them yourself. You still got to pay us rent though, and you know, but you've got to. We might lend you the equipment, but you've got to cut it. Well, that's sort of where we've got to in a lot of places now. Most clubs, mainly not the ones in the valley, if they're lucky they still get cut, but they're not in good condition. I know Doncaster, Barnsley, places like that, they look after their own greens. Sheffield, they look after their own greens now, even though they're in a park. And you heard earlier this year that Leeds Council were trying to close greens down and make the club members responsible for the greens and for the upkeep, and it's just not on. There's no other sport that's treated like this. You know, they don't ask the kids to maintain the five-a-side pitches with the floodlights that are always on all night, costing a fortune. They don't ask the kids to do up the BMX tracks that they built however many years ago that nobody uses anymore. They don't ask the kids to clean the playgrounds or do the maintenance on the swings or anything like that, but they're done because that's expected. It's expected that there's swings and playgrounds. Well, it'd be nice if they also thought the same about bowls. And 1981, that was the first sort of time it was coming to prominence that the councils weren't just as on side with Crown Green Bowls as we would have hoped. And just underneath that, DIY plan to save council cash. Manchester City Council has approved a 12-month trial scheme to self-manage of bowling greens by 19 groups, and they reckon it would save 40 grand. But that 40 grand wasn't being put back into bowling. It was just basically balancing the books for the councils. We are out of pocket every time, and this self-management idea has been introduced elsewhere with a lot of success. Doesn't give a... Meanwhile, Councillor David Sandiford has claimed that bowling clubs using Manchester parks are guilty of sex discrimination. Some clubs have been exercising sex discrimination. We should be insisting that both women as well as men should be represented on the management committee to make sure it's not a men-only setup. And I agree with that entirely, but this was the start of the slippery slope, 1981. 40 years ago, the world looked like it was going to be booming and Crown Green Bowls was going to be one of the winners of TV sport. Unfortunately, that isn't how it's played out, but it is nice to look back, it's nice to reminisce, it's nice to think what could have been if this massive expansion was managed just a little bit better. So guys, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed today. Remember, if you have, click that like button, it does help the channel a lot. I'll be with you on Wednesday for a bit of talking bowls, tell you a bit more about the old gear I've got on, tell you more about a few other bits and pieces that are going to be happening, and just generally keep you up to date with what's happening in the world of Crown Green Bowls. Yeah, so that should be good. So thanks for watching. I'll say goodbye for now. Stay safe till Wednesday. Don't go out in the snow. It's still snowing in Rosendale, can't believe it. Don't go out in the snow, stay safe. See you Wednesday. Bye for now.